Thank you, folks. I was going to talk a little bit about how we get started with Viva Topics. And I wanted to start that off by basically answering some big questions that I get all the time. And I'm going to do that from the perspective of both a customer that might be thinking through the adoption of it, as well as some end users. Maybe you've tried out a few things yourself as well. So I'm just going to do that. And so I wanted to sort of talk through that. What I will say up front is, of course, we are working on APIs, and so we are still working on those. And I want to make sure that you folks do understand that that's something that's incredibly important to the journey that we're on. We will be using, obviously, the Microsoft Graph as the source for all of those APIs, and that's where you'll be able to get that information from. But right now, we do not have any publicly available endpoints for topics. So it's a new product. We just launched about a month ago, so we will be working on those APIs. So I do want to make sure folks understand that and manage your expectations accordingly. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Viva Topics. And Lisa was very clear to sort of try to give me instructions on, hey, don't repeat what we've seen at Ignite, don't repeat what we've seen in many presentations already. So I thought it would be good just to take a couple steps back and answer some of the key questions that I get all the time. So the first thing is oftentimes like, why should I even care about managing knowledge in an organization? And this is a big one because it's something that's maybe been around for a long time. If you've been in this area before, if you've been in IT for a long time, you may recognize this knowledge management problem keeps coming up, right? You might have seen different forms of it in different companies, but it's often still a big issue inside of organizations. And there really hasn't been a systematic and scalable way of doing that. There's been lots of heroic efforts. There are some companies who are really great at it inside of their organizations. And then there are other folks and other customers who are like, well, it'd be awesome if we could do that, but we're not able to do that yet. And so what we're trying to do with Viva Topics is really allow a place to manage topics and manage knowledge essentially as a conscious strategy. So this is something, you know, at an organizational level, when you say knowledge is important and knowledge sharing is important inside of our organization, part of that is needing a system and tools basically to help you to do that. And that conscious strategy of connecting the right people at the right time is really about how we're making that come to life. And all of this is about, you know, how do we create that that knowledge inside of the organization, and then how do we help you to put that information into action? And it's an important piece of this because knowledge is not useful if it's not being used, right? So it's one of those things where we might try to curate it. You might have worked on systems before in the past where, hey, we're going to have a knowledge base and we're going to keep everything in the company in there. And if you keep that knowledge base, that's awesome. But, you know, folks have to remember to go there. And over time, the knowledge tends to degrade because it's not being updated and it requires a lot of work to do that. And so putting that knowledge to work, putting it into action is really what, you know, drives the value for our customers. One of the great quotes I always have here is really around, you know, people spending an hour or so a day searching or reusing information. And that's one of those areas where searching for that information, recreating it is just a big part of the work that we all do. And so we should recognize, you know, 7 weeks a year is a huge thing, right? If we can just make it dented to taking back some of that 7 weeks a year, it's incredible. And then the use cases I have listed here on information, experts, duplication of effort, duplicating inside of a company, avoiding the cold start problems. Those are not things that I made up. Those are things that came from our preview customers. And so they're very specific use cases. How you action those inside of an organization as well really help it to come to life. And so these are the key things that folks have been looking at with Viva Topics. I will say, you know, this is a different offering in the marketplace. So if I look across, you know, lots and lots of different amazing companies that are out there, like what we're doing with Viva Topics, I think is very different. It is a systematic and scalable way of how you manage knowledge inside of an organization, and it has lots and lots of interesting, consequences because of that. When you're in sort of in that leadership position and you're sort of looking at, hey, how we're helping to form something, there's lots of good things that come along with that. Okay, I wanted to start with just a couple things because oftentimes when you're implementing these kinds of tools, the first thing we want to think through is a little bit on the culture side of an organization. And these are things that folks should recognize, I think, inside of your own experiences. You might have had, lots of different companies, they're managed in a different way, their culture is different. Do you have a culture that's about information sharing? Does it even value some of those things inside of your organizations already? And so I thought it was good to sort of take an approach here to help categorize some of those. And every company is different, right? Every company's culture is different. Even within the same company, right? Those cultures can be different, right? So different business units, different product lines, etc. They can all have their own ways too. But I thought it was good to just check through a couple things. Atomization is the first one that I have on the left. And the reason I talk about that is because atomization is oftentimes happen inside of an organization where you've got very distinct product lines. Maybe it's a company that's grown historically by acquisition a lot, and there isn't a lot of cross-organization synergy. And so when you have that atomization happening, there is a few approaches you can think through with knowledge sharing inside of your organization. And it's really around identifying some of those key subject matter experts for a specific area. What are some of the most common questions that they have? And then thinking about how do you help to curate those into knowledge, and then thinking through, the centrally managed piece of it from a topics perspective. Now, there's also a bunch of folks around the hub and spoke model, and this is one I think you should all recognize. I think most companies feel like they do a little of this. There's lots of motivated grassroots of people who are like, yes, if only we could do knowledge sharing better, if only I could learn what was going on across this other part of the organization. These are areas here, but oftentimes it isn't something that's mandated, shall we say, across the company. We say, we like to value knowledge sharing, and we want to do that inside of an organization, but there really isn't a method for being successful or a process already existing inside of that organization. And so one of the things that I would recommend in this kind of area is really looking at those business stakeholders and say, hey, what are the top 10% or 20%, for example, of things that are really important for you to manage? And so think of it as kind of a blue checkmark program, if you will, right? And it's an easy way to get started in terms of here's the topics that you want to work on. These are verified topics in an organization, and it helps to scale out that grassroots effort while still maintaining that degree of control that folks want as part of this kind of hub and spoke model. And then the connected areas here, these are folks who often might have tried doing some kind of a knowledge management system in the past. And the reason I mention this is because with those knowledge management systems comes lots and lots of learnings, right? Folks try to do things on a very centralized, managed way. And then they realize afterwards that, in fact, thinking through a crowdsourcing approach is actually maybe a better way to think this through, and being able to trust folks inside of their organizations and understand some of the responsibilities that come with that as well. And so, in that case, it's really about, motivating that champions group to get started and thinking through what you can do with crowdsourcing. The cool thing is what we're doing with Viva Topics helps you adapt to any of these structures, right? And so when we try to build the product, there's lots of different options within there, but it's important to say, hey, I've got this balance of maybe I want to lock things down really tightly inside of my organization so I can just get started and just try this thing out. Or maybe I'm willing to go, look at the crowdsourcing, both of suggested topics, crowdsourcing of curation of topics, all of those areas. And so we have different ways and different approaches within the same product to enable those. And I think it's just an important part of making sure that you're setting up for success as part of this. Okay, I'm going to move on. So what do you need for this? So you need lots of content and you need activity. And so this is one of those areas where we're building this product for, some of the largest customers in the world right now in terms of, the customers we've been working through with Preview. Now, that's not to say it doesn't work for smaller companies and smaller businesses, right? We've got folks who are medium-sized businesses, I would say, who have a few thousand people in their organization, and they have lots and lots of content, and they have just as much, issues with managing knowledge as huge multinational organizations do. But in order for us to scale some of these problems and actually to solve some of these areas, we need lots of content and activity inside of your organization. And so the bear in my mind is 10,000, documents and pieces of content that you'll need, right? Hundreds of thousands is better, preferably millions is even better as well. And so those are one of the big areas. So lots and lots of content. And that's because it needs to crunch through all of this. It's going to source the topics from the content that you have. So a demo tenant that doesn't have a lot of content on it is not going to have successful results. I'm just going to be very straight up with that, right? If you've got, 30, 100, couple hundred pieces of content even, it's like there's not enough there. There's not enough there basically to be able to use this. And so that's one of the areas here. Now, a couple of questions that come up, and I see the same questions also come up from Lou, so thank you. So why can't we test this out in a dev tenant before moving it out to production tenant? There's a couple of things there. One is to say on the developer tenants, there's a dev tenant that as we would reference it inside of Microsoft, right, has special characteristics. Those dev tenants are something where we're trying to figure out how to get the trial licenses to actually be used on there. And so that is a problem. It's a known problem, and we're working on that. If you just have a demo tenant, as I mentioned, and you only have, a few pieces of content on there, and you just want to do a 30-day trial, frankly, you're not going to get a successful result, right? I'm just going to be straight up about that. If you just have, less than 100 pieces of content, which is what most demo tenants do, there's not a lot of actual content within those pieces of content either, because they're usually just a demo starter pack type of stuff, right? Then, it's not the right kind of data set. What I would recommend is that, this is not something on a production tenant here where you need to, you can lock down essentially from a production tenant. You can actually do all of the indexing that you want to do for knowledge. You could see that only one person need to have access to actually look at the topics, for example. And so you can actually do this in a very, very tightly controlled way on your production tenant, so that you can see the results of what's happening with the knowledge indexing. No end user need to ever see anything, right? You have full control of it that way. And because I think about this from an organizational perspective, I would recommend trying to use this on your full tenant and basically having that indexing happen, and then basically controlling who can see the results of it. And it can be literally one person inside of the organization if that's the way that you want to test it out, right? It's very, very hard to take these kinds of AI technologies and scale them down to tiny amounts of content that are demo packs and demo tenant type of content, right? And give you good results. Really, really hard. Okay, so a couple things. I'm just trying to get through some of the chats too. So Shepard is asking, hey, what's about the approach for smaller organizations? Right, so with smaller organizations, it really depends how much content you have and the kinds of usage you have. So like I said, we've got some customers who have been working with us who are a few thousand users. If you're 100 users inside of a company, right, you're 100 people in the company and you've got active usage, maybe you're a law firm and you have tons and tons and tons and tons of documents, right, then that's a good fit for that, right? If you're a small business where you have a small amount of folks, but not a lot of content, this isn't going to be a great fit, right? It needs to have a body of content. It needs to have that organizational activity around it, basically to help with that. And so I want to sort of add some of those questions there. So hopefully that helps. Try to demystify some of these areas here. And one of the things I will say from a direction perspective, questions we get asked are usually about the extremes, right? Nobody ever asks me and say, hey, Naomi, I've got a company of a few thousand users and we've got a terabyte of information. Is this going to be a good thing, right? That's fine, right? What people ask me about is the extremes of hey, I have 5 users in this company or 3 users in this company, or it's just my personal demo tenant, right? Or we're the largest company in the world and we have hundreds of thousands of employees, right? Can you scale to that, right? And so when we're looking at the topics and the way that we've developed the product, right, we have to serve both ends of the spectrum. But right now, the scale is the big issue, right? So we want to make sure that we're scaling to those largest customers in the world. And then afterwards, it's actually an easier process, if you will, to scale it down. So bear with us as we do more and more to make those happen. But right now, we're definitely looking at how do we scale this to the largest customers in the world, and we're feeling good and confident about that piece of it. Okay, so I wanted to sort of talk through a couple of things there. All right, the other area here is I often get lots of questions on security, compliance, privacy. What else about topics and things that are private and sensitive inside of our organizations? Okay, the first thing here is this is a knowledge sharing system. It is its purpose, right, is to share knowledge inside of your organization. And so I'd really love folks to look at, the search that they have, for example, inside of their organizations right now. If you have an issue with search right now inside of your company and you say, hey, I've got a lot of permissions that maybe have been incorrectly permissions, I've got documents there, right? Adding Viva Topics on top of that is not going to help, right? So I would just be very clear on that. So the same permissions, the same ACLs that you have on documents, the same groups, everything else that you have that's applied right now, those are things that Viva Topics completely respects as part of this. And so I would ask folks to really think through, like, understanding, hey, this is a knowledge sharing system. You should have an exclusion list of things that you don't want to ever find if there's been human error or something has been incorrectly permissioned. So if you have some pending merger and acquisition inside of your organization and you have some project code names for those things, right? Please have a list of those code names. Usually your legal folks have that list of code names, and you can actually put that directly into the admin controls so that it will never ever be discovered, even if you've put, even if somebody has incorrectly put those documents in a place where they were public. And so I think that's a piece there. And so I just want to make sure that folks understand that, like, there is a bunch of exclusion controls, right? We listen very, very deeply to lots and lots of customers on, here's all the controls that we need in order to feel good about that as well. So those areas too. Mark has a question. Does the percentage of licensed users have an impact on the suggested topics? Say we have 5 people in a 10,000 person org. So yes, those 5 people see the power of topics, and no, it is not tied to the amount of licensed users that you have. So they will see the suggested topics based on those, based on their access to those resources that were used to generate the topics. So hopefully that helps as well. Okay, so it's a knowledge management system. It's a knowledge sharing system. And I wanted to sort of just take a minute here, because this is a more technical audience, and talk through a little bit about what kinds of AI is this. So there's that piece of it. So what AI is this? Questions I get here. Is this the same as Azure Cognitive Services? No, it is not. There is a huge group of different tools and technologies that we've had to bring together across Microsoft, all the way from Microsoft Research and great work that they've been doing, all the way through the, different organizations that we have inside of the company, everything from Bing to many of the M365 components, putting all of these things together to make this system work. And so different types of AI is really good at different aspects of this. And so having been in AI machine learning now for the last 15 or so years, there is different strengths for every single algorithm out there. And so we have a number of different algorithms that are running on this. And so every tiny piece that you see on this topic card, right, as simple as this topic card might look as part of this, being able to understand that there's different algorithms that are running behind the scenes in order to generate this information, each piece of this information, and then putting that information together as part of that too. And so it's just an important piece to understand. So first thing I wanted to mention here is that topic identification and conflation. So just finding the name of the topic. How do we even figure out what is the topic inside of your company, right? And so that's where all of that content and that richness that you have in activity inside of your organization really makes a difference. So topics are generated from the seed documents that are in there, right? We're looking through all of the documents that are in there. You get to specify the scope of that indexing, essentially, to which SharePoint sites that you want right now to have as part of that. And it's that basically that primordial soup, if you will, right? That is, it's basically going through and it's looking through all of that information. And from there, it figures out topics, right? It doesn't generate them against a list. It doesn't generate them against some other pre-trained model that we have that has all the topics in the universe somehow, right? It's generating them specifically for your organization, and it is a function of the content that is put into the system, right? And so I want to be very clear on that. Now, there are other things you can do to kickstart it, right? We want to bring in managed metadata services. Like if you've invested in MMS and you have a whole list of product names or regions or whatever else that's important inside of your company, right? You can use that as a seeding mechanism to come into topics. And that's great, right? It's a great way to get started. You can also put things in there manually as well, right? So if you know there should be a topic on a particular area, you can do that. But it's basically Viva Topics is generating that from that source documents, like the original content of that, which is why we want to look at, every single one of those documents in your company has to be recrunched essentially, right? And figure out what are topics within there. And it's got to look for all these different kind of aspects within that. And so it's looking for different facets around the same topic. Is this the same information? Is it being reworded in different and new ways as part of this? And so that's what it's doing. And so that crunching that goes on there, the alternative names, extraction, the acronyms that we're doing, again, those are being sourced from the content directly inside of there too. And I think it's just a very important piece, because identification, that's a whole different set of algorithms. How we do acronyms and alternate areas here, those are a different set of algorithms. How we think about conflation of like, how are these two topics similar or the same? Could they possibly be the same? All of those areas too. And so those are definitely all different pieces together. Now, the definition extraction is something that happens from the documents themselves. And this is an important aspect of everything that we're doing, right? We've got people and AI at every stage. The AI here is not supposed to be a magic bullet. I have always talked about this. Hopefully you all have heard me over the last couple of years explain a little bit about this. It's people and AI together. AI is supposed to be getting us, 70% of the way there, right? And it's helping you take the first cut so that it's easier for people to come up to speed and then be able to take a curation essentially around it and help to edit it. And the reason for that is because we know that AI is not going to be perfect, right? But it's easier if something is able to create a first draft of it, and then you can come in and edit it. And so what we're trying to do is like, hey, people, we want you to be doing the high value work here, taking it, to the nth level that's needed. But we want AI to take that first cut. And so I kind of think of it as kind of a robot intern, essentially, right? So, we've all been interns before. There's a bunch of things that you have to do to crunch through, data on behalf of someone else. And it's kind of doing that, right? And so you should think about it in that way. It's not supposed to be a perfect silver bullet, right? Sometimes it's amazing, and sometimes it gives me incredible results, and I'm like, wow, it's amazing. It just did all of that by itself. And then there are other days where I see something and I was like, well, that was just, really not very good. So, so it tells you that. And so it's the same kind of approach, right? It's AI, right? So it is learning. It's understanding a little bit more about the content every single day. It's understanding for the feedback, the signals that you give it is also really important as part of this too. So I'm just kind of trying to hit the questions here and make sure I don't go over time. So they say better stop me as well if I do. Once topics are curated by SMEs, do future calls of data affect the cards? Yeah, so Jen, so this is a great question. So on the topic page itself, right, where we have the suggested people and the suggested content, and then there's pinned files and people, right? So the pinning piece is the part that subject matter experts go in and curate, and those links will always stay there because a human came in and did that and said, hey, these are really important to be part of that. But the suggested files and content and suggested people will continue to update, right, all the time. And that's what we want AI to do, right? We want it to go off and actually do all of that mining essentially for us. We want it to keep the page up to date because that's the part we have a hard time with, right? And then as an expert, you can go in and curate it later. So you will see those results change if an SME has not pinned something directly onto that page. Okay, related people and then related documents. It's another important angle here because these are, again, different sets of algorithms that help with what we're doing here. So that suggested people, obviously using a lot of the insights and activity that we have in the Microsoft Graph that you all know and love so much. And then the same thing is true with related documents, right? We're looking at people who are actively collaborating on this. We are not inferring that these people are experts on a subject. I just want to be clear about that. We are inferring that these people have something to do with this subject because they're actively collaborating on this area. Maybe they've authored a lot, they've created a lot, right? We're not inferencing that they're experts as part of this too. Okay. A couple things here. And then it's a good question, Alex. So my little screenshot here, and I'll show you a demo in just a second. So here, for example, on the news page, it shows a little bit, Alex is asking where do the topics links show up on SharePoint pages, emails, etc. So this is an extraction here. You can see this is just a clip out of a news page in SharePoint, and those highlights happen automatically on there. And so in this case, you can see that the Mark 8 and SOAR in this case has actually been highlighted automatically. And then when I hover over that, you get these areas. So right now it's available in SharePoint pages and in search. So you'll see it across lots of different search experiences, Microsoft Search, across Microsoft 365. And then the other piece of that is we're obviously rolling it out for Teams. We're looking for emails and across a number of other experiences, Yammer in particular, as well as part of that. So hopefully that helps to understand a little bit more there. Okay, I'm going to go quicker. And so I wanted to also just take a minute to understand just these different types of technologies that we're using behind the scenes, again, because there's many different levels as part of this. So lots of statistical models that you might expect, right? There's frequency and usage and recency, and that's, you know, a simple way. Basically, it's a very basic way to look at that information. On top of that, we are doing a whole bunch of things around template-based discoveries of patterns. And so we've tried to look at different patterns that we see for topics across an organization, trying to help encode that into models, and you can see how that influences acronyms and alternate names and things that are untyped topics right now. And topic types is something that we're also working hard on as well. And then representational learning. So this is another piece of this. When you have these heterogeneous entities, you need to be able to extract out of those heterogeneous identities to get the phrases out of there. So that means when I'm looking at specific documents, like I need to be able to extract what the definition is, even when something isn't saying, you know, what is Project Cortex, for example, right? And then there's a question, right? That's a very simple question and answer type of series. What we want to be able to do is be able to take out that definition automatically from a set of content. And so that's one of the areas where we do a lot of work there. And then clustering itself, all of that conflation work here. Conflation is incredibly difficult problem, as you might imagine, right? Lots of things called the same thing inside of an organization, many acronyms stand for a lot of different things. We have to look at all kinds of activity and signaling as well inside of the graph with that. And then we have to look at, you know, what is this area as part of this too? So that clustering of related topics too is incredibly valuable, and then helping to disambiguate. Now we have lots of tools that are coming for humans to be able to do these things too, but know that there's a bunch of work behind the scenes going on inside of the AI too as well. And then language models as part of this, so language expansion, understanding like where did we get an acronym from, where is that definition coming from, and making sure we have great models for that, and then connections in particular, so all kinds of graphing based techniques. And that is just some of the tech that is being used behind the scenes for this, right? So lots and lots of different algorithms at work in order to specialize in different ways. Okay, what licenses? Hamid asks, what license do you need for these AI features? So you need a Viva Topics license, which currently list price is $5 per user per month in the United States at least. And then it gets obviously translated into your local area as well. Hopefully that helps. Okay, so people and AI, right? These are things where we want to, again, take that first assistance of this too. And so topic identification, we want to do that first cut, right? And be able to make sure that we're identifying the knowledge inside of the organization, helping to identify topics themselves. And then we want you to be able to curate that information, right? Our goal, of course, is amazing to have suggested topic pages that are totally filled out already and give you a great start. But we always want to believe in the power of people to come in and help curate that information, right? You have a context, you have a different learnings, you have a subject matter experts who are, you know, really motivated by this area, but it's always easier when something has taken the first draft, right? And that's really what that AI is all about. And then topic discovery itself. So discovering knowledge in the apps, and then thinking through, like, you know, what are these topic cards? How can you think about discovering topics in the everyday work, right? So when we have all this knowledge, again, we don't want to silo it off into a knowledge base that's really difficult to get to. How will you ever know that the knowledge exists there? And so, you know, we want to bring those experiences directly into where you're doing work. So whether it's Outlook, whether it's Teams, whether it's Yammer, whether it's SharePoint, and many other canvases inside of Microsoft 365, all of those things want to be lit up as part of that too. Okay, so let me go through here and look at the other questions here. So people and AI, there are these different roles. So within those cultural tenets, as I established at the beginning, there's different kinds of organizations, and different kinds of cultures that you want to support inside of your company. There are some roles inside of here as well. And so, you know, understanding there's these topic contributors, they're the subject matter experts, essentially, folks who can help curate that. Everyone in the organization should be able to have access eventually to topics, right, to be able to discover knowledge and be able to be a consumption of that. And then there's kind of a knowledge manager role in there. And so you might have multiple knowledge managers inside of a very large organization. And they were looking at, you know, topic management, creation and editing, etc., doing some work there. And then there's a knowledge admin, basically, who's helping with that too, who's heading up originally on those areas too. Okay, let me switch my screen over and do a couple things here. So first one I wanted to show you is just, let me show you one of these experiences here and just understanding a little bit more. So this is an example. This is just, again, a demo tenant. So we have limited data. We have the same issues here. So we've got limited data here, but you do see some suggested topics and suggested areas. So the first thing is this is a web part, right? So I just want to be very clear here. This is the extensibility piece of SharePoint, normal SharePoint extensibility, because it was very important for us to create web parts because customers asked us, we don't want to create another another destination, right? Another silo essentially inside of organizations. We want to build on top of what we already have, right? And so we already have lots of places in our intranet. We have lots of great content, obviously, inside of SharePoint and sites. Where can we just put this topics web part where we need it? And so this topics web part helps you to understand your connection to topics. And so that's where you see these ones that say suggested topic here. It's because AI is saying, hey, this is kind of things I found. And you can see that sometimes it's got great results and sometimes it hasn't got a description, for example, in this case, but it thinks there's a thing there. So remember, it's figured these things out by themselves, right? And so Graphic Design Institute, in this case, we've got an alternate name. It's figured that out from this proposal document here, and it's very clear where it's sourcing this information from. Same thing is true here with Driscoll, right? You can see it's extracted this information. Now, if I go to that page, this is the Driscoll page. So again, it's a suggested topic page, right? AI has generated everything on this page here. And so it's figured out these alternate names. And importantly, we have the transparency of why of these things are being shown here, right? This is not like AI found this and then you don't understand where it got that information for. It's important as part of that people and AI piece here to make sure that people trust what they're seeing. And so every time we have something that AI has been generating, we give you the evidence for why it has generated that, right? And that explanation here on the page is important. So from these marketing goals, right? It came from this document. This is where it got this particular project name. From this particular extraction here to help you understand what this project is, right? It extracted it from this document, right? And it's not because somebody told it to, it just figured it out by itself, right, to do that. And then these suggested people are based again on the activity that is going on. So it's very hard, again, for us to generate activity inside of an organization. That's why I always recommend to think through, how you can run this on your daily driver tenant, if you will, because you need that activity. And then basically to get started, you can limit it to a very small amount of people who can see that information. So suggested files and pages here. So you can see here, again, these are things that it's found. It found these automatically. It will keep updating this list constantly until somebody wants to pin something. As a subject matter expert, you're able to curate those resources here. But those suggested files and pages are important. And then again, the reason you're seeing those things, right? We have this thing here. It says activity, right? And it says, why did I find this thing? Why is it being shown here, right? It's actually topic 4 times being mentioned, et cetera, right? There's a reason that we're showing you this information, right? And it's just trying to explain you so that you understand where it's coming from. It's not AI just making it up somewhere in the corner, right? So it came from your document, right? So that's part of that. And then we have related sites, obviously, as part of this too, again, based on the resources that it found, and be able to show all those areas too as part of this. So let's see. I'm trying to look at some other areas here. All right, so with Driscoll here, so with that suggested topic, I can come in here and I can edit this information, right? So if I go into editing this information, I will get the normal controls I have on top of SharePoint, right? This is, again, it's a SharePoint page, so I can actually get the information here and include web parts, etc. as part of that. So if I want to customize the look of this page, I can do that. It's a SharePoint page. It has some special sections on here as well as to. So if I wanted to put in some alternate names, I'm able to do that. I could say Project Driscoll is a new so and a great way to share best practices or something like that inside of my company. So I can edit this page basically to whatever I need here. And then you'll see immediately it's registering that, hey, these have been updated by me, and I did that right now, right? And because, again, it's going to source that information from me as a subject matter expert, and it's going to put that there. And then here, I can actually say, these people, maybe they really are part of this project or something that I want to make sure that they're here. And I have the opportunity to either remove the suggestion altogether, because maybe it's somebody who worked on something 2 years ago, has moved on to a different role. I can do that easily. Or maybe I can pin people. So in this case, I'm going to pin Patty here. And then I get the opportunity. You can see we get this little check mark here, and helps me to understand, like, it's pinned by you and it's pinned now. And I can also even change the ordering of folks if I have a whole bunch of folks on the page here. And then I can describe how Patty is connected. So I can say she's the lead project manager, for example. Okay, so I can do all of that, and it helps me to describe that connection. Now here's that area, Jen, where you were asking earlier, like a subject matter experts. If I say, hey, this is an overview document, this is a great document, I always want this pinned on this page, I can easily do that. So I'm going to click pin on this case, and that pin is always going to be there, right? That document is always going to be there, but AI is going to continuously update and keep these links up to date, right? So as new content is being created, it's going to add them in here, and then they can come in and get curated as well, or you can just leave it to do that work, and so folks can see that information as it comes in. Okay, so I could do that, and then I can also build out that topic map. And so right now this is a connected topics area, so you can actually put in other topics and include those connections within there. So if I wanted to add in other things, I don't know, one of the other topics is in here, but I think there's one called Albert. So you can see here I can connect to that related topic, and I can add this here, and then I can say help other people understand how these two topics are connected. So similar customer-oriented projects, whatever it is, right? Sorry, I'm just putting in some text, right? So I can update those things, and then that connection is clear for other people too. Now we're working on a whole bunch of stuff to help do this automatically as well, but we want to importantly make sure that subject matter experts, again, have time to curate this information and are able to put all of this in here as well. So important part of all of that. Okay, so when I publish this information out, because I've now human curated this, essentially, I want to make sure that the topic permissions, make sure that things are actually available to people across my organization, if that's my intention, or if I'm just trying to keep it locked down, again, I can just use the site permissions on here as well. So say I'm doing a bunch of things like curating pages before we go live, right? You might want to do that and keep the site permissions on it just the same way as you normally would in SharePoint. And then you're able to control the release, if you will, of those topics too. So it's all good. Yeah, and it's important, right? That mind mapping type of thing is a really important part of that. So it's a good point there. So those areas too. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that you understand around those areas. So how we do that role as a subject matter expert. Now let's look at sort of a topic manager role. And so with topic managers here, I get these suggested, confirmed, published, and removed. And there is a life cycle associated with these. And so suggested topics are always ones that AI has created, basically, right? It's trying to mine through all of that content and make sure that you're able to use that as well. And then here's with those ways to help you parse this information, because there's kind of that curve that goes with it, right? There's a curve that goes with what we implement with Viva Topics. And it starts off with, oh, I don't have any topics. Why is it taking so long? So it's going to take a couple, maybe 3 weeks even, if you depending on the amounts of content that you have. So at least a couple weeks, and it will continuously find more and more and more and more and more topics over time. And so there's always this thing of like, I don't have any topics. And then a couple weeks later, there's like, well, there's quite a lot of topics. And then, if it's a really large organization, it's like, oh my goodness, there's so many topics, right? And it looks overwhelming. And so we want to make sure that folks have a way to control that life cycle. And so the quality piece of it here, and so that quality score is basically a score that helps you to understand how well AI has already filled out the page, right? And so it helps you to say, hey, I've already, taken the first cut of these things, and I think it's pretty good. And so it's a great way to be able to spend your time and focus your time here. The other area here is about the impressions. And so that's actually generating that based on the organization as well. So this is just the amount of times that people have seen a topic. So these are topics that are being highlighted in content. So in a news page, for example, automatically, or have been shown in a search. And it just helps you to parse your time as a knowledge manager, so you can be focused on the things that are most impactful, on the topics that are most impactful inside of there as well. And then I can see here, suggested people. I can say, yes, this isn't a topic. I could, decline it immediately. And then if it's removed, I think one of the questions, I missed the question exactly, but if it's a removed topic in this case, yes, you can actually restore it back. You can confirm the removal. Once you've confirmed the removal, it's gone. But then you can say review and publish if you want to get it back again, if that helps as well. So I apologize, I missed who asked the question here too. So all of those pieces here. So once the topic has been confirmed here, it's again that other life cycle stage here. So these confirmed topics here, and there's always this nice little info bubble that helps you understand that. The knowledge manager sees the things that they have access to, right? There is no permission that allows you, unless the person has access to every piece of content on the entire tenant, there is no permission that says, hey, the knowledge manager is able to see all of those topics across your organization. And you are always going to see the page, per your security permissions. So if I only have access to 3 of these documents, right, because those are the nature of the documents I have already, I will only see those 3 as part of those suggested files and pages, unless a person has come in and said, no, pin this onto this, onto the page here, right? So these AI pieces here that have been generated and suggested are always making sure that we're able to use those same security permissions. Now, confirmed means that a person has confirmed it. It's as simple as that. Suggested is all AI. Confirmed means that somebody says, yes, this is a real topic. And that matches up with this area here. For example, if I wanted to say, hey, on this Graphic Design Institute one, if I click through and look at this, I have no idea what I'm going to see, but we'll see whatever content comes up on this. I can actually confirm this as a topic. Maybe I see it as a highlight inside of my organization, and I can confirm it in there as well. You can see it's got abundant information. Once this has been confirmed, it means the topic is a real thing by a human, right? So a human says, yes, this is a real thing inside of there. So publishing means that somebody has actually come through and edited this as well. So these topics have been published out and said, yes, somebody has looked at this page and published it. And there's a reason for that, right? It's like we've got an AI generated page, and there are different stages basically to having human curation as part of it. And so that's why that life cycle is there. And so there's hopefully that helps with that too. Okay, and then within that, obviously, we also have this life cycle here around removed too. Okay, last thing that I wanted to show you as part of this area is just on the admin experiences. So when you're first getting started and you're setting up this system, there's a number of different areas here that we want to look through. And there's 2 things that I want to point out in particular. So topic discovery. And so the first thing is topic discovery, and that area means here selecting the types of topics that are part of this. And so we recommend you to do all sites inside of your organization. Again, not changing security, privacy, permissions, anything else there. We recommend all sites, but you do have the ability to proactively exclude specific sites. So if you think there's a specific set of sites that you never, ever want to have knowledge indexing happen for, you're able to do that. And so I wanted to be very clear about that. So you can say only just these sites. If you say no sites, nothing will happen basically. So there will be no indexing at all for knowledge, and so the product won't work. So if you say all except selected sites, that's a good option too. And then only selected sites means you specify a specific list here. So we use a bunch of signals. Right now, we're looking at topic discovery on the content within SharePoint. We use a bunch of signals that are coming from other parts of Microsoft 365, but we don't actively go index content in there. So for example, I think folks were asking about email earlier. We use that as part of the activity piece of it, but we don't ask for it as part of the topic discovery piece of it. Okay, and so this would be the other areas here. So topic visibility. This is the part, again, when you're first getting started, that you have the opportunity to say who can see topics. So only selected people or security groups, right? And this is the part where you should control and say, hey, when you're first getting started, switch it on for all sites inside of your organization, and then just have just a few people in this area, right? So these are the folks who will see the results essentially of that indexing, and that's a great place to start. And so once you're in there, you can add groups if you need to. As you expand more confidence in the system, you're able to do that. But I think it's a great way to get started inside of your organization. Basically see the full breadth of what's being there. Again, it depends on your permissions as a knowledge manager. Your permissions of the documents will see what you're able to see as topics as well. And then, for topic permissions, you can actually specify here who can create and edit topics as part of this and who can manage topics. So who are topic managers, knowledge managers in your organization, and creating and editing as part of that too. And then the first time through the gate, you will need to create a topic center. And the reason to have that is we need one site basically where those pages that have been curated by people essentially are kept in there. And so in this case, we've called it Infopedia, which is reflective of what we have at Microsoft, but you could call it whatever you need as part of that too. And then remember that web part that I showed you earlier for the end users, that can go on any site inside of SharePoint, wherever you want to put it inside of your intranet. So all of these different areas together. I do want to draw your attention to the fact that we have a bunch of great documentation out there as well. And so please do check out and please make edits as well and suggest edits as you need to too. So we have things around setup and administration. We have a bunch of things around visibility, some nice videos as well as part of that too. And so definitely always appreciate the feedback on that too. All right, now I think I've talked too much and Vase is probably going to give me the hook, but that's okay. I did want to say, there's a couple of things to remember here. Topic identification improves when there's more content available, right? So hence I would recommend the scoping for all sites inside of your organization. We always look at the security, privacy, and location of your data, right? Always the same trust promise that we have with Microsoft 365. Nothing changes because of that with Viva Topics. In order to see the topic cards, the topic pages, the highlights, all of those pieces, users do need a license. And right now we only work in English, right? And we're working on lots of other different languages. But as you can imagine, all of those different algorithms that I talked about have to be language focused. And so it actually takes a long time to make all of those pieces too. Okay. Saeed has looked through all of them. Awesome. Do you have any feedback for us? On the documentation. And then just some last resources here as well. So just wanted to make sure that folks are aware the Content Services Partner Program is a great way to connect if you're looking at building on top of these experiences in the future as well. And then, of course, we do have the Resource Center all up as part of this too. So lots of stuff. So hopefully that was a good sort of overview in terms of it's getting started, but also some practical steps as part of this too, and making sure that you understand here's all the things that we're looking at. It really is a privilege to be working on such a trailblazing product as part of this too.
Now, Naomi, I want to ask the one question. There was a question related on what if you have all of the valuable information outside of the SharePoint? So it's in ServiceNow or in a Salesforce. Is it in the roadmap? Can we get that information indexed or somewhere? Is it something that we're looking into?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I meant to mention that and I didn't. I apologize. But yes, it's a good question. So the Microsoft Graph content connectors, they are the way that we are going to bring in information here. So it's not quite there yet, but we do have it working in one of the rings. So what we want to do is use the Microsoft Search Graph content connectors, aka.ms/iwantconnectors, right? Those connectors. So the same ways you bring in ServiceNow results, MediaWiki, etc., into the Microsoft Search, right? That is the way that we're going to bring in that content into Viva Topics. And so we'll be able to basically expand the knowledge indexing across those connected content as well. And so, when that corpus is there, it's a great way to bring in all of that information. So definitely excited for that too.
Excellent. Thank you, Naomi, on that one.